I'm going to jump right into the history lesson. Tell us about the Egyptians.
They built pyramids.
Brent said Caesar cipher.
What's that Caesar cipher?
Caesar cipher? What is that? Gregory, what's the scatale? Spartans. That thing. What's it do? How's it work?
Well, what you do is you get a diameter of a rod.
Yes.
And which can change throughout the rod.
Good.
So,
you could have a taper, right?
Yeah, it could taper, it could change shape throughout the whole thing.
Good.
But what you do is you wrap a piece of paper around it, and then you write your message down it, and then you write other things on the paper to obfuscate the message.
Good.
You transmit the message to somebody, and unless they have the same diameter rod, it's not going to come out.
Exactly. It's like, I think instead of paper, they were using leather. It was like a belt. Because it'd be more durable for traveling. You take it on a ship, you wouldn't have to worry about it getting wet and that kind of thing. And they would write across the leather as if it was a single sheet and just rotate it as they were writing across it. And they might pad it. They might add some extra characters. And then when you pulled the belt off the taper, it's just a long line of characters because you're not following the belt around. You're writing across the belt. When you pull it off, you've got all these different letters that are gibberish. And unless it's wrapped by somebody on the far end with the correct taper and diameter, they can't read it. Good. Very good. Now tell me about the Caesar cipher, Gregory.
It's a simple substitution cipher.
Say again?
Simple substitution cipher. Usually 3 character shift.
Yes. Yeah. Often associated with Julius Caesar. It was supposed to be a 3-character shift along the alphabet. Instead of writing the letter A, you would write the letter D. And you would just do that all the way along. This was state-of-the-art crypto back in the day. It helped that only 0.001% of the population was literate, so there was less people trying to crack this stuff. Yeah, did it work? Sure, for a while. There's nothing wrong with that. All right. Who knows Jefferson's stack of disks? Okay. All right. There's 36 disks, each with the entire alphabet on it. They all had 26 letters on it. Each disk had a number associated with it, and it was on a spindle. And what you could do is you could take the disks off and restack them in any order you wanted, and the number associated with the disk would be the part of the key that you would create. So disk 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, you would write 4, 5, 7, 8, 9. That was the key that you and I would share. And we would each set our stack of disks according to that key. You would turn your you would turn your disk to the letter that you wanted until you spelled out a 36-character message. Hello, my name is. Then you would go around the spindle and you'd find another row of gibberish, and you'd write that line of gibberish down. You'd send that message. That's your ciphertext. If the person on the far end turned their disk so that line of gibberish would turn up, they could look around the disks until they found a line that wasn't gibberish. Realistically, because of the complexity of it, there wasn't going to be more than one line of non-gibberish. It would be it would be one heck of an unlikely coincidence to have more than one line of plain text come up from that ciphertext. That was actually pretty sophisticated. It was used early in American history for diplomatic messages. It was later discovered by another researcher and implemented in another format and actually used by the United States military, I think in the 1920s. In a little bit more sophisticated, they used aluminum discs instead of wooden discs, and they used more than just 36 so they could get a longer message. Then in World War II, now, Andy, Enigma. What was Enigma?
It's kind of confusing.
It's a mystery. It's an enigma. What's the Enigma machine?
It's a German encryption machine that used kind of the same idea as the Jefferson disks. Uses a rotational disk 4 up to 7 that I heard about at some point.
Okay. I remember 3-character codes.
Yeah.
So you'd set your wheels every day based on... Okay.
It And as you push a button on the keyboard, a different letter would light up, and that's what the what the ciphertext would be.
Good. And the Japanese had their own. It was it a switched machine? They called theirs purple. It was invented by the Japanese Navy. The Japanese Army didn't like it. They had their own little inter-service battles about whose crypto was stronger. And it was used for sending diplomatic messages. Both of these ended up being cracked. The Germans' Enigma initially by the Poles just prior to the war, and then later there were some variations where some of the machines were captured and used to decrypt some of those messages. They also, there was an entire effort called Bletchley Park in England, run by a guy whose code name was Intrepid, and all they did was decrypt a whole bunch of stuff. And Alan Turing helped in that. He was instrumental in that effort, too. Cracking that, I think, was called Magic, was what we called the data that we extracted from that. The Purple Machine was cracked also prior to World War II by the American Signal Corps, and that data was called Ultra when we decrypted that. Earlier when I mentioned that if you relied on secrecy of the gear to protect the crypto, you're violating Kirchhoff's principle. That's what these did. They assumed that no one would ever see this machine, and that's how their ciphertext would stay secret. Once the machines get out, or once people learn math at a sufficient enough rate, keeping the secret is no longer valid, and these become susceptible to widespread cracking. Today, because of our computing capacity and because of our algorithms, we can crack everything that's ever come before. You could give a sixth grader a laptop, and they could crack all the Enigma messages. They could crack all the purple codes. They could do all the simple substitution as, just a hobby. It's fun. Anyone ever play with codes when you were a kid? Anyone make disappearing ink? And what'd you use, Brent?
I don't remember. I just remember.
Lemon juice was always. I remember doing that. It was fun. You'd send secret messages to each other. The opportunity is also that anyone who wants to can make their own robust crypto, something that would take a long time to decrypt. Does that mean that it's going to be permanent? That once we encrypt something today, it'll never be decrypted? No, the exact opposite. It suggests to us that everything that's encrypted today could be decrypted sometime in the pretty near future.